Welcome to Fastlane, the JCTV podcast. Brett Bennett's joining me to start off this edition, and we're going to start looking at this week's schedule right here on JCTV on YouTube. And it was Tuesday night. The Slide Job Racing League takes to Talladega Super Speedway for the final race of their playoffs before the season finale in Season 10. Brett, Talladega, it's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, it definitely will be. Definitely hope no one does something really stupid. Yeah, that'll be a good race. It's plate racing. You're going to get what you're going to get. People are going to make aggressive moves, and people are going to do stupid stuff. The goal is going to be to survive to the finish and then hopefully be there. And then hopefully it doesn't turn into a fuel mileage race, because that would suck.
Well, then we're going to have to keep that mentality for surviving to the end and getting to the end of the Talladega race without being involved in the big one, because right on Thursday night we stay at Talladega for the SAAC Coast to Coast Cup Series for race 8 of 10 this season, and it's our first super speedway with them this year. Brett, I believe you're going to be making your debut on track with them.
Yep, I'm looking forward to it. The next gen, in a lot of ways, I know they're both at Talladega, but the two cars race very differently at Dega. The Xfinity car, you can tend to get big runs, but it's hard to do stuff by yourself, and it's hard to really get huge momentum without a decent bit of help. Plus, in the Xfinity car, a little bit of contact will ruin your race because the damage model is very punitive in that car, compared to the next gen, where basically if you don't suffer engine damage, you will be able to get it fully repaired and be fine and good to go. So you probably can be a little bit more aggressive in coast to coast. So that'll be an interesting race, seeing how that will play out. Probably my biggest concern in that race is going to be that I just have no help out there. I don't got any teammates or anybody I can pit with or anything if we end up having green flag stops. So that's really the only concern with that. And then, yeah.
And then our normal Friday and Saturday leagues are off this weekend as we celebrate Memorial Day weekend, watch all the motorsport going on in real life, and remember those who made the biggest sacrifice. And Brett, what's it gonna be like having a week off for these leagues and building up the pressure going into the summer stretch?
I mean, I'm not focused that much on the leagues this weekend. I know. I think 50%, at least 50% of JCTV is at either the Indy 500 or Coke 600 this weekend. So I know I'm gonna be in the grandstands at Indy on Sunday, so that'll be fun. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. ITPN, I'm not hugely looking forward to what's coming up with Watkins Glen being the next race, because as some people may know, I am absolutely terrible at road courses. But then that said, you keep, especially, I know at least ITPN, we're still early, and NAORs I think the same way. We're both early enough in the season. You still don't really know what people have. You've run enough races where you can get a little bit of a feeling, but also you've got people who are further down in points because they just had a couple of really bad results, or you have some people who are real high in points because they had one or two surprisingly good results that are kind of maybe above where they should be running. And it'll be interesting to see how that continues to play out, where those people who are off to strong starts can keep it going, or where those people who are off to slow starts can turn it around.
We're talking about the beginning of the seasons for those two. Now looking at the overall upcoming schedule of races right here on JCTV, we're going to be winding down the Slide Job Racing League MF Racing Designs Premier Series. Like I mentioned before, the final race of the round of 10 at Talladega on Tuesday, May 23rd, already have happened this week. It's going to be interesting narrowing down to just 4 at Auto Club Speedway on May 30th for the finale at 9 p.m. Brett, what are your expectations for the finale at a place like California with those Xfinity cars?
Auto Club with the Xfinity car, I am not run the Xfinity car nearly as much as I've run the trucks in the next gen, so it's not I'll probably be racing that race, but it's not my strong suit. But having just ran a championship race at Auto Club in the trucks in a league off of JCTV, it'll be a very interesting race. I know in the Xfinity car, the tire wear there is going to be a huge deal to manage. There's usually decent fall off at Auto Club. It's it's not dissimilar to Michigan and how it races, but there's a lot more tire management that's going to come into play. Plus, depends. I think it's a night race here, and what time of the day the sim will be in. But if it's a day race, like that was what the other league I ran was, and that the trucks were loose. And if the trucks are loose there, then the Xfinity car is going to be deadly loose because the trucks are almost always the tightest of the stock cars on iRacing. So it was a race. It's definitely going to be a lot of throttle management and being able to manage the draft on the long straightaways. Restarts are going to be insane just due to how wide that track is and the fact that you can go 4 or 5 wide in the turn one. So it'll be real interesting to see what plays out there. Yeah, and this week going in the Dega, that's a prey race, especially if you're in the playoffs, trying just to get through the next round. So at least Auto Club, I think, will be a lot better show of who has actually got the pace rather than just throw it into a pot and see what happens.
And then you mentioned the draft at Auto Club. We already talked about the draft at Talladega, of course. It's going to be crucial for Coast to Coast this week, May 25th at 8:15, right here on JCTV at Talladega. And then you mentioned this for In the Pits, going to Watkins Glen. But so is Coast to Coast next week, next Thursday, June 1st at 8 p.m., right here on JCTV, of course. It's going to be road racing with the next gens. We already saw a little bit of that with Coast to Coast early this season, our first broadcast with them actually at the Daytona Road Course. I know you probably don't have a lot of laps yourself with the next gen at Watkins Glen, but how is that car race on the road course, and what should we come to expect in that race?
I actually have ran at least one league race in the next gen at Watkins Glen, so I actually can kind of speak to that. The next gen on road courses, it's very different than the trucks. The underbody aero means that you have a lot more grip in higher speed corners, but at the same time, the brakes are a lot touchier. They're bigger, but also you think you can brake later, but they're a lot more finicky in their ability to lock up. And if you lock up, you're just going to go spinning, and that's never a fun feeling. Overall, though, it'll be an interesting race to see. The races at the Glen and any road course really comes down to one, how well you can attack braking zones. That's something I know I really struggle with, and that's where people like Michael Kruger and Caldwell and ITPN really got me. And it's something that, and it's also managing tires over the course of a run, being consistent and smooth. Because you can run some fast laps early by just by just sending it full throttle, but later in a run, you're going to really feel it at a road course. And since pretty much every league doesn't do cautions for incidents unless like it's a track blocker, which I don't think everyone says they'll throw a caution, and I don't think any admin has ever thrown a caution in a road course race, which just my opinion, they should throw cautions in road course races, but they without the cautions, you kind of are set into a strategy of how many stops you're going to have to do in a race and how long you're going to have to run tires, and usually it's a pretty decently long stretch. So that tire management's always going to play a big factor as well.
And of course, continuing the theme of Talladega here in the recent week on JCTV, NAOR fires back up Season 13 on June 2nd. That's a Friday at 9 p.m. for their trip to Talladega for their first time on a super speedway this season.
They're in the Gen 6 at Talladega. The Gen 6, I honestly don't remember what plate package is on the Gen 6 right now. Whether they reset it back to like the really good one, or it's still on the kind of crappy one at the end of Gen 6. I mean, it could end up putting on a good show. You can make moves in it. It's just it's not great about generating runs. Like the really fun one was the one they had when there was the same one that was really fun in real life, where they would just generate massive runs the entire race, and you pretty much just you could back off somebody and just slingshot them again and again. But yeah, that race will once again, Dega races almost always come down to two things: where your help is. Well, three things: where your help is, keeping your car clean so you're in it at the finish, and then if a lot of times the third one is pit strategy, because sometimes it doesn't matter you catch cautions at the right times, or you just pit and fuel under caution. But we've seen in some leagues like ITPN this year at Daytona where the entire race ran green, and it was really determined by when you pitted and who you pitted with, and how well you got on and off pit road, and whether you could gap the main pack with a smaller pack with. And I could see that playing out at any of these races coming up at Talladega. So that's it's always interesting to see how they play out. I mean, I know me personally, I feel like I've had many good chances to win plate races in almost every league I've been in, and yet I almost always come up short. Oh, I've always come up short. I don't win races. That'd be great. But yeah.
And another track that we are racing at pretty commonly here in the next couple of weeks is Watkins Glen. You've mentioned this a little bit for the ITPN Truck Series. They return Saturday, June 3rd, 8 p.m. right here on JCTV for their first road race of the season. You're going to be in the 47 truck. What do you think about saddling up there at the Glen for that race there?
Yeah, I think that race it'll be whatever. I'm not going to be competitive for the win.
It's
It's
definitely three.
Maher, Caldwell, and Kruger.
Okay, I was thinking Poker, but he's definitely not racing, so never mind. It's only three of them. Yep.
Yeah. Which, just my opinion, we should have had only one road course on the schedule this year, not two. But that said, or we should have went to a different road course for at least one of them. But I love Watkins Glen. It probably is my favorite road course. Fun track to drive. I'm just not going to pace. um, I honestly wish. I know we're not throwing stage cautions and we're doing a timed race, if I remember right. We changed the rules a little bit this season. So that might change things a little bit. I'd still love to see if we have an off-track admin for that week. If we could throw cautions whenever there's like an incident with a multi-car incident involving like somebody, or if like somebody has to stop and tow, then it's a caution. Because I've seen some leagues that have rules like that, which I think that would be actually not the worst rule to add, because that really opens up the strategy and makes you actually have to think about what you're doing in that race rather than just planning the whole race on one stopping. So it'll be just to see though if Maher can do what he did at the Roval and dominate, or if Kruger and Caldwell will have anything to say about it. I mean, obviously there's always the off chance somebody like Siciliano shows up, or Dwarnick, who usually are pretty good at road courses, but I haven't seen them in a while, so would probably doubt that they would show up.
Look at the end of the Season X schedule for the Slide Job MF Racing Designs Premier Series. Already mentioned Talladega this week, Tuesday at 9 p.m. It's the Talladega Decider 200, final race in the round of 10. After Dylan Parker won last week at Darlington for a second straight win, but he's got a huge deficit in his playoff run after shenanigans in the opening race at Nashville. And we're going to end it off at May 30th, 9 p.m. Auto Club Speedway. But we already talked about this a little bit. But we're going to talk about the championship race, of course, being a championship for what's that track going to be like hosting that race? Obviously, a little similar to Homestead, which is favorited a little bit for those type of races in terms of the aggregate and the wear on the tires.
Yeah, Auto Club will definitely come down to tire management, and honestly, um, out of the playoff drivers, I would say I think there's some that's going to really benefit. Um, anyway, I'm still learning more and more about the people in Slide Job outside of people like Jonathan Parker and Ethan Fonseca Moreno, who I've raced with in other leagues. So it's gonna be hard for me to like call like who would win that race, but yeah, it's really gonna come down to can you manage your tires and can you keep your truck? Can you and will you and how you deal with traffic and draft? Because the Xfinity car, you're actually going to have a lot of off throttle time because that car has enough horsepower where you're up to speed at the end of the straightaways, and then you got to really be out of the throttle. And forget, I don't think you brake at Auto Club. I don't remember braking there last time I was there, but it's been a while, so maybe you do. But being patient off throttle and then getting back to the throttle at the right time and being able to keep it open off the corner and not have to lift because you're getting loose or lift because you're pushing towards the wall, and maintaining that momentum all the way around is key to having success there. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. It's a great track for a championship race. I would say there's probably both in trucks and Xfinity, and pretty much anything on iRacing. I would say the tracks I think are the best tracks for championship races are Auto Club and Homestead are probably the two best. And I like Kansas too, because all three of those are tracks where it's usually close racing, but there's a lot of driver skill involved in that you have to really manage tires and manage your race. And but all of them also have the unique thing of being able to make multiple grooves work in the corner, which I think really promotes good racing. It really makes you think about what you're doing instead of just like a lot of tracks where you're just going to run the bottom lap after lap or try to run the top lap after lap. You actually have to think about where you're going to place your vehicle every corner. So I think that really just, to me, that those are tracks that require you to be a well-rounded driver to win. So I think those are great track choices for championship races. So
I agree. I think it's going to be ecstatic to see what's going to happen May 30th at Auto Club Speedway. JCTV gets started 9 p.m. Eastern with the race coverage, but we will start with Fastlane Live at 7:45 and talk to some of the playoff drivers and other participants in the race, and of course the guys in the booth to predict what's going to happen in that championship race. It's going to be exciting to see there.
yeah, it'll be very interesting, and we'll see how it plays out. And I'm probably going to be out there, but we'll see. We'll see what life throws at me the next week.
Now we look at the remaining races on the SAAC Coast to Coast Cup Series schedule, the newest league right here on JCTV, as we round up the Season 0 refresh campaign. It's going to start this Thursday, or it's going to continue, this Thursday, like we've already talked about, May 25th at 8:15 p.m., Talladega Super Speedway, and we're going to have guest analyst Alonso Chicano make his booth debut with us. He is, of course, the Season 2 champion in the Pits News Truck Series, and then we look forward to June 1st, Thursday at 8:15 p.m. Of course, we're going to race at Watkins Glen International like we talked about already, and then ending the season, June 8th, 8:15 p.m., Homestead Miami Speedway, and we're going to have the all-time winless starter on JCTV, Brett Bennett, once again returned to the booth after he made his debut at Iowa. Brett going to be in the booth. We've talked about championship races. We've got one starting, a championship battle starting in Coast to Coast. Going to be returning to the booth after a start here or there on the racetrack. So what are your expectations for the end of this Coast to Coast Cup Series season?
We're just going to see how things play out there. I'm still really learning. That's kind of the thing with any league. The more you race in it and follow it, the more you start to learn which drivers to watch, how people drive. But I guess being a guest analyst for a championship race, I'm gonna have to start getting my spreadsheets ready. Get my point spreadsheet all out and paired, ready to update as the race goes on. But yeah, that'll be fun. I don't know. If Josh will have me, I might be in the mood for Watkins Glen too, because I definitely don't want to race at Watkins Glen, because it's not. I don't have fun racing stock cars at road courses. I like road course racing. I just don't like stock cars at road courses. They're not designed for it. But overall, yeah, it's a good stretch to end the season. Really, lots of variety in track type. Going from Iowa, where it's a slower short track, to Talladega plate track, to a road course, and then to the 1.5 miles of Homestead, which is always interesting. You're gonna have multiple lanes, multiple options, and it's all going to be about same thing as about Auto Club. You want to place your car in the right spot and work your way through traffic and use the draft. So we're just going to see how that all plays out. Hello, I'm Brett Bennett, driver of the number 47 SBLD Ford F-150, and you're listening to Fastlane, a JCTV podcast.
Last Tuesday, the Slide Job Racing League MF Racing Designs playoffs continued for Season 10, Race 3 at the Darlington Raceway for their throwback race. Luke Nupp is a GOAT 200 once again. He did not end up in victory lane. Dylan Parker, like I mentioned beforehand, scoring his second straight win, leading 61 laps to victory after scoring the pole. Dalton Kilroe finished in second. Luke Nupp finished in third. Jonathan Parker finished fourth. All playoff contenders, and Jackson Glenn Austin rounded out the top 5 spots.
And 6th, we had Michael Kruger. He qualified for the Dash for Cash along with 7th place JT Larsh. 8th place, we had Caden Atkins, another one of the playoff contenders. 9th, we had Justin L. Johnson. And 10th, we had Hunter Karsten. Justin L. Johnson also qualified for the Dash for Cash at Talladega.
And you mentioned JT Larsh qualifying for the Dash for Cash. He won the round at Darlington with that 7th place finish, in fact. A good showing for him after returning to Slide Job, the founder of the league, returning to this season in Season 10, but had quite a few rough races to go, so good to see a good result in that sense. So looking at the standings, this is of course before the Talladega race on Tuesday. Going into the final race of the round of 10, Dalton Kilroe has a comfortable lead now over that gap, 23-point advantage. Jonathan Parker sits second, 18 points above. Luke Knupp is third, 15 above, and Sartaj Man has continued to drop. He falls to 4th place, just only 11 points safe right now of the cut line going into the final race after contact with Michael Kruger on the final corner of the last lap at Darlington.
Yeah, and we got the drivers on the outside looking in, heading to Talladega. We got the number 2 of Caden Atkins, sitting only 11 points out. Michael Thorpe Jr. in 34 is also in a decent spot, as well as Ethan Fuzzy Moreno. All three of them probably in a spot where they can get in, but they're probably going to need some problems for drivers in front of them. Back tied for 8th, we got Mark Frimpong and Blaine Sparling. And then 10th, despite winning at Darlington, we got Dylan Parker.
Yeah, Dylan Parker, a winner at both Watkins, Glen, and Darlington in the playoffs, but penalized in the opening race at Nashville for affecting the outcome of the race. So he knew basically going in that was going to be a tall task. Advancing in any way advancing is mathematically impossible now going into the race at Talladega this week.
Yep, and then again, it's Talladega. You want to throw out the sheet of paper and just wad it up, throw it in the trash, because you don't know what's going to happen at Dega. I mean, same thing we've seen happen in ITPN back in a season. I think it was 2 seasons ago when we had Dega as the season finale. Like, I thought I entered that race pretty safely in the playoffs, and then literally just trying to ride and get stage points to try secure my spot, and then I end up getting run over from behind, turning the outside wall, and then don't have the pace to stay in the pack at the end of the race and miss the playoffs. Like it can change very quickly with just the way the drafting tracks go. So it'll be interesting to see who can keep their cool and possibly make it in the next round of the playoffs.
Absolutely. And now we're going to look at last Thursday's results in the Coast to Coast Cup Series from the Iowa Speedway on May 18th. It was Douglas Newbigging taking the win, started third, but he led 52 laps to score his, I believe, his first win on the season. And Kody Riveras, it was his first win because Kody Riveras, the only repeat winner this season, Season 0 of the Coast to Coast Cup Series, finished in second. He led the most laps of the day from the pole position, but came one spot short. Brian Lorenzo finished in third, with Nicholas Borowski finishing an impressive fourth, with Drew Rebb coming home in fifth at the end of that Iowa Speedway race.
It was a really interesting race to see play out. That last stint, Kody Riveras running the top, Douglas Newbigging on the bottom. He just stayed consistent for the last 30 laps, just consistent lap after lap hitting that bottom. And his persistence paid off, and eventually Riveras looked like he finally started to lose the rear tires. He made a last lap charge and tried to get to him. But overall, though, that race was a really entertaining race. It was a lot of fun being in the booth for that. And end of the day, it'll be interesting to see how this continues to play out. I know Douglas Newbigging was only making his second start of the season. I believe he had run Daytona. I don't know if it was the road course or the oval earlier this season. But yeah, I was really impressed with how both him and Kody drove at the end of that race and that battle they had. So
yeah, it was really fun to watch. It was great to have you up there in the booth with us to break everything happening down, because as you see there, we had 9 cautions in our first trip to a short track with the Coast to Coast Cup Series on JCTV. It was interesting to see all the lead changes too, because Iowa is a track that we have visited. I think that was our 3rd time in about 4-week span. So we had already come to expect a lot of things at Iowa, and we really did not expect to see a lot of passing up front, and we saw that all night long.
Yep, and it was a really entertaining race. It was a race where you saw a lot of people struggling with the car, the rear tires, and just spinning out. But in the day, it came down to who could keep their tires under them, and ended up being Douglas Newbegin at the end of the day.
Now looking at the championship standings after the race at Iowa on Thursday night, this is, of course, including the drop weeks that will go in effect in the final point standings. Kody Riveras leads the league still off of his 2 wins and 5 top 10s with 459 points. Brian Lorenzo in the 77 still sits in second, 19 points behind. Ollie Reaves dropped back points in this run after his win last week, not managing a great result at Iowa, so he's going to trail by 41 points going into the race at Talladega. And Ellis sits 44 back, with Jason Rashcock distant 106 back in 5th place.
And you see it in coast to coast, you've seen 4 drivers really distance themselves. Riveras, Lorenzo, Reaves, and Wells were all up front at various points in that race at Iowa. Ellis Wells had a couple issues, couple spins. But still, I think recovered, if I remember it. Still recovered for a good finish. Ended up getting 7th and not killing himself too badly in the points. And there's still enough races left where, especially with a road course and a plate track, where those people further back can still make a charge at it. I know, if I'm remembering right, their point system is not a standard 40 points for a win. It's yeah. 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 So that said, you could easily see some of those drivers, I would say probably anybody back to at least Tarpley, possibly back to possibly anybody in the top 10 really could easily pull themselves into contention with a good race at Dega if some of the leaders run into issues, because that chaos that you can run into there could really shake things up. And then you go to Watkins, Glen, a track where just because you're fast elsewhere doesn't mean you're going to be fast at a road course. So it'll be interesting to see if that shakes things up as they continue on their season and wind down here in the last 3 races.
Yeah, you mentioned that distance is a little bit deceiving from what we know in other traditional point standings from the other leagues. Races pretty much are weighed almost more than 2 times from what we see the other races. So like you mentioned, pretty much anyone inside this top 10 or 12 can still be in contention come Homestead. If something happens to those top 4 and 5 to where they fall out of those races early and don't score enough points to consistently be in the top of the leaderboard when we get down to the end of the season. So it's going to be really crucial, like you mentioned.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out as they continue to go to the end of the season. It's Talladega this week. It has a high likelihood of shaking things up. That's basically all there is to it. Coming off ITPN at Michigan, where we had Justin Duran pick up some, you might say, dominating, led a lot of the race, really probably was the strongest car, a well-deserved victory for him at Michigan, followed by Michael Kruger coming home second. He kind of came back late, almost got there at the end. Cameron Caldwell third, Alex Kerfan fourth, Joshua Arnold fifth, Tristan Maher came home sixth, Alonso Chicano seventh, Cole Snyder eighth, Jamie Wright ninth, Roy Crump 10th, and then finishing 11th, despite, in my opinion, having a great chance to win, is myself, because I threw away the race because I'm an idiot.
And we now look at the updated points after Justin's win in Michigan after race 5 of 23 in season 4 for the In the Pits News Truck Series. He moves into the lead, like I mentioned, over 9 points over Alonso Chicano in that second position. Michael Kruger is in third, 11 points behind. The Daytona winner early this season, Cameron Caldwell, season 1 champion, is fourth, 31 back. Alex Kiffin is 35 back in fifth. Joshua Arnold, two good results of the last 2 weeks, moves him up into the 6th position, 37 back. Michael Walls, our winner at Homestead a couple weeks ago, continues to move down after another DNF. He is 38 back. David Duran is 8th, 39 back.
You got the final two playoff spots right now occupied by Ethan Fonseca Moreno at 45 back and Cole Snyder 48 back. Tristan Maher and myself, probably the first two out right now, 11th, 12th. It continues to play out interestingly. Michigan was a really interesting race. As always, Michigan did not disappoint. I don't know if we banned anybody from the league. I don't know if there might have been a banning. I don't know. I'm not sure. Was that a banning or was that him just leaving? I'm not sure. Either he just left or was banned. We can just say drama occurred. And also, Michael Walls got kicked from the session. Probably didn't deserve to get kicked for what he did do, for what he got kicked for. But in my opinion, he also was driving like an idiot, so he did kind of deserve to get kicked. Love you, Micah. I was about like if he had chopped my nose one more time, I was gonna like send him. So he twice tried to clear himself on me when he wasn't clear, and I had to check up for it, and I was kind of fed up after that. But yeah, it was a race where it ended up coming down to when you pitted at the end. We got a caution of I think 30 to go. Actually, probably 25 to go. I stayed out thinking we'd get another caution. Then we did get another caution like 5 laps later, and I was like, oh, I'll stay out one more time because we'll get a caution with like 10 to go, and I can put on tires and pass everybody. And then we didn't get another caution because I had passed Duran for the lead right before that second to last caution after. It was a race of up and downs for me because I drove over the choose cone like an idiot, went all the way to the back, worked my way all the way back to the lead without like pit stops or anything. I just literally passed people all the way up to the lead. Had some luck, like there was one or two instances in front of me that kind of gave me some spots, but all in all, had pace and got up there and took the lead. Then had the caution come out, stayed out, kept lead on the next restart, and then that's when I threw it away by not pitting. Either way, ended up being a disappointing result for me, but it was a really great performance with Justin Duran. He really was the class of the field all day. Michael Kruger was right there with him. I don't know. It's hard to judge how much somebody dominates at Michigan just because of how that race runs, and the leader has a little bit of advantage. But with the draft, if you can defend the top, it's harder to make passes once the tires get worn. You really need to start having people be really aggressive too. And the one thing that was kind of frustrating in that race is the radius car trucks all got up front, and I think I've said this before, but I don't like races when they all get up front because they're annoying to try to all pass, and I don't know if they actually do. It might just be my subconscious thinking I'm getting screwed with, but it feels like they play drafting games that really keep you from being able to get around them or get by all of them. So it can get frustrating, but I don't quote me on that because well, I guess you can't quote me because I just said it. But end of the day, got to keep taking what we can get, and we'll go on to the next race.
Well, moving on to the next race, I want to talk about Justin Duran a little bit more. You mentioned a little bit of dominating win in Michigan, leading most laps of the day over half the race, and leading the point standings now. Looking at those top three, they're separated a little bit from the rest of the field. What do you think about Justin's chances for overall championship this year, Brett? Because he was close last year,
I
he
think
broke
he's
through for his wins, and he just came short in the playoffs with everything going on.
I think he's a decent threat for the championship. I mean, this season, I think Kruger is the favorite, and I'm not. I think Kruger and Caldwell are the two favorites, and that's just because us going to the elimination style playoffs with a final race at Auto Club. Kruger and Caldwell, in my opinion, are the two best drivers at Auto Club. So that's who I would say are the two championship favorites. That said, I think Justin's a strong contender. He's also got a lot of strong tracks in the playoffs. I don't think he'll be the points leader after this next race. Me and him will resume the biannual road course mid-off between me and him. Hopefully we can put on a show like we did at the Roval 2 seasons ago. But I think Kruger will probably be the points leader after the Glen, to be honest. But I think really you can't go wrong with anybody in the top 5 in points right now. And at the same time, I think Josh Arnold is a really consistent driver. Um, he could easily pull himself up into the playoff picture by the end of this season. Um, Ethan Fonseca Moreno, has a lot of speed. If he can, there's some points where I feel like his racecraft could use some work, but overall he's a really good driver. And I think especially if he gets that racecraft fully figured out and figures out when he needs to push and when like not to, I think he's a strong contender. I think I'm a contender. I'm probably not, but I'm gonna keep saying I am. Because if I keep believing that I'm gonna win a race, eventually I'll win a race. Although I probably need to hire somebody else to be my crew chief, because me being my own crew chief apparently doesn't work.
In the Season 13 DI9 Designs NAO Series, for the fourth race of the season at WWT Raceway and Gateway, it was Jonathan Poker once again taking the victory, his third consecutive. He led 117 of the 144 laps. Race ended under caution with no green-white checos enabled in the NAL series. It was the seventh of the night, but there was 10 lead changes despite Poker's dominant night. He and Pacey Wygant finished 1 and 2, with Pacey running a special paint scheme, of course, in the Sophia the Fierce 180. Jamil Hawkins finished in third, Giovanni Klein finished fourth, Noah Blackwell finished in fifth, and Jimmy Monch finished in sixth position after a 15th place starting position. And then on last Friday, the NAR Series continued race 5 at the Roval Charlotte Motor Speedway, the 2018 edition of that layout, and once again Jonathan Poker, for his fourth straight victory on the season, took it home in dominating fashion. Only 3 lead lap cars in that race, but there were 3 lead changes between he and Ethan Fonseca, who started on the pole position. Unfortunately, he failed to finish after crashing late into the pit road barrels. It was Austin J. McGill who finished in the second position, with Pacey Wygant in third. Brayton Holt was fourth, Jamil Hawkins finished fifth, and Joshua Arnold finished in the sixth position. After the race at Charlotte's Roval on Friday night, Jonathan Poker still leads the league with 201 points, but it's close, with Pacey Wygant in second, 6 points back. Joshua Arnold is still in third, 16 back. Hunter Peach is fourth, 28 behind. Nicholas Hapiak in fifth, 34 behind. Ethan Fonseca Moreno drops to 6th, 36 back. Cole Snyder is seventh, and Justin Quimby rounds out the top 8 spots.
Sorry. Sitting ninth, we got Mike Campbell, 61 points back, 11 points above the cut line. 10th is Jamil Hawkins, 10 points above the cut line. 11th, Jose Ruiz, 9 points above the cut line. 5 points above the cut line, and 12th is Giovanni Klein, 3 points above the cut line, and 13th, Jimmy Monch. And 1 point above the cut line, and 14th, Zachary Meredith. Sitting just outside the cut line, 1 point back, tied for 15th, are John Osborne and Kenneth Cheney, as it's really tight right around the cut-off line right now. Sounds like it. It will be interesting to see how things play out as it continues. I'm really interested to see how their playoff format works out. I see it playing out one of two ways. Either it'll be really cool, or it's going to turn into a crap show when somebody dumps somebody to beat them in the points. Because I'll be honest, if I was racing against somebody head to head, one, if you have teammates, you are telling your teammates to block and to drive like it and to do everything they can to not make it hard on that person. Two, if there's like comes down to it and like I have a chance to advance by dumping somebody, I probably want to do it. I'm very good about saying I'm going to dump somebody and then not dumping somebody because I'm too nice of a person. But I know a lot of people would not have the same qualms that I do about that. So let's just see how that plays out. I know we're doing something similar mid-season in ITPN. I forget which race we're starting that at.
Yeah, I agree. 7 races before we start that Fab 14 at Richmond. I agree it's going to be pretty dynamic is the word I'm going to use to see how that unfolds using, like you mentioned a little bit, using a tournament-style bracket to see how we're going to advance through these playoffs. 4-race tournament in the NAR series to wind down the season. It's going to be, it's going to be thrilling in one sense or the other, like you mentioned.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how things play out. But we'll keep seeing. We'll see if we'll see how that plays out for the rest of the season, and how that tournament format ends up working. It'll be really interesting to see.
Well, Brett, thanks for joining me for the In the Pits News Weekend Report as we start off this episode of Fastlane.
Yeah, no problem. It was always a pleasure, Adam. Look forward to next time.
Fastlane, a JCTV podcast, is sponsored by FACES, the National Craniofacial Association.
Hey, I'm Cameron Cole, driver of the number 12 C2 Graphics Chevy Silverado in the In the Pits News Truck Series, and you're listening to Fastlane.
Welcome to this edition of the JUICYSPYDR Sim Rig Showcase, and Cash Culp is our guest driver in the SAAC Coast to Coast Cup Series. So, Cash, let's get started with the basics of what you got for your sim rig here.
So yeah, it's a I think it's called an FGT sim rig. It's from Next Level Racing. I have a T300 RSGT mounted to it with the TH8A shifter and TSSH sequential shifter and handbrake mounted to it. Don't mind my dogs in the background. They're very excited to be here.
TH80 ship. Did you say what pedals you have? Do you have the pedals that normally come with the Thrustmaster? Or do you have the oh shoot, what are they called? TLCM.
I don't think they're load cell ones. It's whatever came with my T300 wheel. It's not like those plastic 2-pedal black ones. I think they're just normal 3-pedal ones that come with the RSGT. I also have the Ferrari SF1000 wheel rim that I use for road racing sometimes.
Pretty cool. What kind of computer hardware do you have?
I have a pre-built from SMI. Let me check the specs on it right now. I think it has a 3080 in it. I think it has a Cortel i7 12700. I think, or sorry, it's a 3060 Ti on it, and it's a pre-built from MSI.
Gotcha.
It's a pretty good rig. If my Wi-Fi wouldn't be stupid half the time. It's definitely a step up from my $300 Amazon laptop that can barely run Google Chrome.
So if there's anything that you would upgrade right away if you could, what would you upgrade?
Oh, that's a great question. Probably my internet, but besides my internet, that's a pretty good question. I just got a new sim rig a few days ago.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I'm not too sure. Maybe my probably get a new desk for other stuff besides sim racing. Maybe get another monitor or two. I just have all of this in between my bed and my closet. So it's a pretty cramped space, but it's fine. You can see the wheels. I think it's in the third picture. You can see how little the space is. It's just something to do when I'm not racing in real life.
So, you mentioned racing in real life, Cash. That's one of the unique things for our guests here on JCTV, that you do race in real life. You've told me a little bit about it, but can you explain a little bit more about where you race and what you race and a little bit of your success?
Yeah, I race in Southern California. I have a 360 non-wing sprint car, which produces about 700 to 750 horsepower to the wheels. It's just either in and out of gear. No, there's no transmission to it. I race mostly on the southern west coast in California, and I've raced in Arizona and Northern California before. And a few years ago when I raced go-karts, I won 5 championships, with the most recent being last year in an outlaw kart.
So, going back to the iRacing side of things, what is the most memorable moment with your rig so far?
I think I've only done like probably a race or two, and it was probably from SAAC, but I know it's not what's sent this rig, 'cause I don't have a lot of seat time in it, but I've run a few IC 500 sprints, which is a race my friends are holding, just like with it's a basically Indy 500 with the IRO ones. And my monitor just went black, so it's back. My monitor went black for a second, but I don't really have a lot of seat time in this new rig, but it's definitely 10 times better than my other one, which was literally a wheel stand underneath a desk and a chair to it. Just a normal desk chair. But my other one I used for like multiple years on end. I think it was my most memorable moment was probably I have a lot of memorable moments on that one. Probably winning my first ever iRacing race. Maybe it's probably one of them, or running a few other league races.
What ultimately made you decide to invest into iRacing?
My good buddy and a guy I've known for a very, very long time, Jason Beckman. In October 21, he said, "Hey, get this iRacing thing." And I had a potato PC at the time, so I kind of went back and forth for like a month about it. So I finally gave in because there was a promotion going on at the time. It was October of 21, so I finally got it, and it's kind of evolution from there.
Well, Cash, it's great to see the evolution here on iRacing, and we hope to see you run up front in the end of the season here in the Coast to Coast Cup Series. Good luck.
Alrighty, thank you, sir.
That was Cash Culp, driver of the 01 in the Coast to Coast Cup Series, and that was the Juicy Spider Sim Rig Showcase this week. Thanks, Cash, and thanks, Josh.
Hey everyone, it's Joshua Coppernoll, driver number 42, JCTV Chevrolet Silverado for PBR, also known as Grace's Daddy. You're watching Fastlane, a JCTV podcast.
Fastlane is also sponsored by Spooky Games. Check them out in Attleboro, Massachusetts, or online at spooky-games.square.site, or on their Facebook today. Links are in the description. Now it's time for drivers of the SAAC Coast to Coast Cup Series to join Fastlane and talk about their expectations for this season ahead, the remaining races of the season ahead, as the season winds down. This was actually recorded a couple weeks ago as the series rolled into Charlotte Motor Speedway after the race at Chicagoland Speedway. So I spoke with Ellis, Kody, Riveras, Ollie, Reaves, and Shawki Tarpley, 4 drivers who run very consistently in that league in the few races we have held on JCTV on the Coast to Coast Cup Series. So we look forward to seeing that season wrap up and hope you get to balloon these guys more, recognize the names as we move forward with this league in the future. So starting with Kody, Riveras, driver the 36, moving on from Chicagoland, what do you have to expect with Charlotte this week, and what was the race at Chicagoland like for you?
You know, man, I had a great time at Chicagoland. The race was fun from green flag to checkered flag. I battled in the top half for most of the day, really the top 5, I would say, most of the day, which is what I said I was going to try to do after the Daytona Road Course, after that win there in that interview that we had after that race. But yeah, I think it went really well. It was really fun. I made a mistake on that first pit stop. You guys didn't quite catch it on the broadcast, but we had quite the calamity coming into pit road, a little miscommunication, and I ended up pitting a lap earlier than I wanted to. And in the confusion and trying to not wreck everyone, I didn't turn the auto fuel off, and I was a lap short on fuel there. So I was focusing more on saving fuel rather than saving tires. And so I didn't quite have the tire left at the end that I wanted, but it was a great battle with Ollie. Tried to, send it a couple times there at the end and ended up losing a spot, but it was, like I was saying, great time, great race, and hopefully we have more of that on Thursday night.
Shawki Tarpley, driver of the 25, you rebounded to a 6th place finish. What was that race like from the driver's seat of your car after being involved in quite a few incidents there from what we saw up in the booth?
Honestly, when I was just really just trying to drive the car as best as possible with the amount of damage I had, and I had with lucky with my teammates, and they helped me, encourage me to get across the line six and I'm right now I'm trying to stay as consistent as possible with staying in the top 10, staying up in the top, trying to keep up with these guys up here, and just learning from them and everything.
Honestly quite a surprise to me because during the practice sessions we did, I really wasn't there. Like even up until the last second, right until qualifying the actual race, I didn't feel like I was on par at all. But once I was able to qualify fourth, I think it was, I realized, okay, I'll be able to do something. I just gotta run my race how I usually do, chill out. You know, I'm fine with not winning. My goal for each of these races have really been to do my best to rack up points, and I think I'm the highest person in points without a win. So that's definitely working out for me, and I by far have the most halfway stage points, or what, like 30-40% of the way stage points. So I think I definitely have that speed, but one of these races I might get a little bit impatient and try to go for the win because I don't think I'm gonna be able to keep this up forever.
Well, Ollie, you of course won the race. We spoke to you in victory lane, but what else more do you have to say about that race at at Chicagoland, being the victor and moving forward in the league?
It was fun, just like driving with everybody. You know, it was real good racing early on, middle, when after we pit, and just to the finish. Very fun race. It was good going to the pack after the green flag pits. Went out a few laps later than everybody, like two, so they had fresher tires and just went, was a little bit faster at the beginning, but long run speed came in at the end there.
I can go ahead and take this one. I think Charlotte's a unique mile and a half in that it's got two asymmetrical sides, and the banking doesn't necessarily facilitate side-by-side racing as much as some of the other tracks. It's also a little narrower. So I think what you're going to see is a lot of comers and goers, a lot of short run speed and a lot of long run speed from different guys, and hopefully you'll have guys coming up through the field, falling down through the field, and different strategies playing out as long as the race can stay green. And we did a test race here, actually did a couple of test races here before the season started, and that's kind of what we saw, especially among those top guys. So I think it's going to be a different kind of race than we've seen so far this year.
Well, for me, just knowing how the track races, I think not that we'll be lucky to have a race without it, like sarcastically, but generally, I think that this is going to be a race without very many cautions if guys can stay off each other, and we're lucky for that. Because the way the track races, if you're pushing too hard, the main place I see is you'll end up in the wall in 3 and 4, which, if you know what you're doing, shouldn't cause a caution, or just getting loose in 1, 2. And we were definitely able to, at least from my point of view as a driver last week, could see that people are able to really hold on to their cars when it's fairly loose, because it got like that at certain points last week. And also, it also got real tight too. And because of that, I think we'll be all right this race. People were able to fight loose and tight, and we're going to see a lot of that this race. And like Kody said, it's a real narrow track. We're going to see a lot of comers and goers. So it's going to be a real battle seeing who has the short run pace, who has the long run pace, and if there's really going to be anybody that's able to have both. That's going to be a real challenge at this track. It's a real interesting one, different from the other mile and a halves.
And also that transitions off the corners are really loose too. So I feel like some people are going to get really loose. If you can stay consistent off the corners, then you're going to be good.
Obviously, my ultimate goal is probably try to get to like the final 4 maybe win the championship, but that's probably gonna be a long ways away. I still got a lot to learn from these guys, and honestly, I just hope I can just finish very consistent, like stay in the top, at least top 15 most races. Yeah, that's really it.
Halfway through the season, and I'm doing pretty good. Fourth in standings. You said if I can get a win or two, I'll definitely be for sure even more in contention for the championship than I already am. And I'm pretty surprised with my performance so far. Like I knew I would do good, but I didn't expect championship contender good. And we honestly have a lot of people so far who could win the championship. In my mind, it's a toss up. So I just gotta keep doing what I'm doing. I'm gonna keep going for my strategy of just going for the points at the stage because it's working out so far. So it's gonna keep working out. And with the drop rounds, it makes it more interesting too. Right now, all of the races I've had have been relatively good, at least compared to everybody else. So without drop rounds, I'm doing even better. But with the drop rounds, if I have a bad race or two, I still have that cushion since I haven't really had a bad race yet. So yeah, there's a lot going into this championship. I'm gonna try and win it. I'm gonna do what I can.
You know, I think Ellis is one of 3 guys still that's completed every single lap this season. And just piggybacking on what he said about he hasn't had a bad race yet, you know, all but 3 guys have had a bad race. So if they come up, you know, we got Talladega on the schedule, which is always a wild card. We've got Iowa. We've got, you know, short track tempers there. Watkins Glen is another road course, a little bit of a shakeup. There's a lot of guys that might not be able to fall back on as big of a points cushion, and might have to suffer a little bit more when it comes to those drop rounds. So I think Ellis, I think Brian Lorenzo is another one of those guys that has completed every single lap this year, and in doing so has secured themselves a couple extra screw ups, if you will, if it comes to getting a bad result. And I think that's going to be a nice little cushion to sit on as we come to the closing stretch of the season.
Yeah, I'm actually really happy where I am right now. After starting the season, finished 14th or 15th at Daytona and 27th, like 3 laps down at our auto club after being wrecked or being involved in a wreck. I'm really happy where I am right now. I was worried that I wouldn't get a win this season because it's just so many people like racing, you know, all this competition, you know, Ellis. We've got, you know, Brian Lorenzo, we got Kody, Shawki. We got a lot of people that could fight for this championship, and overall, just happy, you know, to race. Just happy where I am.
I'm sitting on a lead, but it's not much of a lead at all. It's really I could find myself second or even third in the points after just the end of the first stage on Thursday. It's real close up top, and you know, like you mentioned, I've got those 2 wins, but I also have 2 abysmal results. One at Daytona getting wrecked on the last lap, and one at Las Vegas getting wrecked right before the stage. While you know I pit from the front row on that last restart before the stage, and so like I was saying earlier, I don't really have much to fall back on in the way of drop rounds. Those 2 races that I have already dropped essentially, or I'm hoping will end up being my drop rounds, are pretty low points. So as we go throughout the end here, I need to really make sure to keep my car clean, keep these good results coming, and you know, 2 wins is already 2 more wins than I thought I might get. We've had some pretty strong fields, some pretty strong drivers so far this year, and you know, if you would have said points lead 2 wins halfway through the season, I'd have signed up for that in a heartbeat.
She took a bite. She was sweating, or no, she wasn't sweating. She started glistening.